Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions in the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. On this show, I interview lawyers ditching the billable hour and experts who can help attorneys move beyond billing time. Thanks to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel. Links to both in the show notes. More on them later, and use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED when signing up. You get 10% off, and it supports the show. The best way to support the show is to share it with someone you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. I'm thrilled to have with me today on Law Subscribed, Rocky Lalvani. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Matthew.
So I heard you on Victoria Collier's podcast, Smart Lawyer's Position to Transition, but just in case my listeners haven't heard that episode, which, by the way, link to that in the show notes, go ahead, Rocky, and give yourself a little introduction.
So my name's Rocky Lalvani. I run a company called Profit Comes First. And basically what we do is we work with business owners to help them ensure that they have a growing and profitable business. I'm tired of everyone saying grind it out and make 10x and do all of this. No offense, I'm lazy. I want to work as little as possible and make as much money as possible. And that's kind of our motto is how do we work less, make more, enjoy our business, and have our business serve us instead of being a slave who's working 60 hours a week for our business.
Well, you're in good company here, and my longtime listeners are happy to hear you say that. And for the new listeners, let me say that when you're billing your time, and that's the only way you make money. There's no way to work less and make more money, right, Rocky?
No, there isn't.
And so the way that it sounds like you could help my audience, and we're gonna focus in on the first one of these, but it's important to mention the second. The first is a lot of us law firm owners thinking about becoming law firm owners because we're sick of billing time and we want to leave and start our own firm based on the subscription model or an alternative fee. But then also, if we have clients who are trying to sell a business, that sounds like that's something that you could also help us with. Is that right?
We will help to ensure that the business is profitable. I mean, let's face it, you're going to get a multiple of profit. And if you have no profit, anything times zero is zero. So there's not much value in the business then other than the assets and not all that great.
Right. Well, like I said, I heard you on Victoria's podcast. The reason I invited you on, because she has a lot of guests on there. They're not all always going to be relevant for my audience, but you said you know there are some lawyers that they're sick of billing the 6-minute increments and they want to move to monthly recurring fixed fees. And while I don't think you maybe use the word subscription, that's a subscription model. And so I'm curious to know more about, without getting into confidentialities and stuff, like what have you seen in that space and the difference between those lawyers who are not billing time versus some other lawyers or professionals who you represent that they only make money billing time. Tell me more about that.
Well, so let me ask you a question. If you're billing time and you learn how to get efficient, what happens?
You make less money.
You make less money, right? And on top of that, nobody's paying you for being smarter, right? As a matter of fact, the smarter you are, the less you make. And so that in there is the underlying issue. Now, on the other half of the thing, a lot of my clients are not lawyers. And our number one conversation is don't call the lawyer because you're going to get a massive, massive bill. And nobody knows what the bill's going to be. And honestly, the longer the lawyer talks, the bigger the bill goes. And hopefully he says something or she says something of value, right?
Right.
But it creates this tension. Like, I don't want to call my attorney because I don't want to bill, but yet I need to know the answer. You know what? I'll just do whatever stupid thing and we'll deal with it later. It can't be that big a deal, right? And you probably got a million stories of how that turned into a big deal. As a matter of fact, the way I built my business was I tell my clients, I'm like, look, I don't want to be like an attorney. I don't want to bill you every time you call me. I go, if you have a question, I want you to pick up the phone and call me because it's a lot easier for me to fix the problem then than to fix it after you make a mistake. And so that is kind of the whole idea behind value-based pricing. How do I, as I get smarter, faster, and better, actually get rewarded for that? Right.
Mhm.
And so that comes back to value based pricing. The clients, on the other hand, love it because all of a sudden I can sit with my other clients and go, hey, you do a lot of legal work because it's part of your business. You have all these contracts. What's our legal bill? Well, we're guessing this. Whereas if they come to me and say, you know what? We have a predictable legal bill. This is how much it is every month. We can budget for that. And because I can budget for it, I go, okay, now that we know what the legal portion is, I know how to price that into the rest of your offerings to cover the costs of that, along with the other costs you have in your business. So they're happier because it's a predictable bill. They're not afraid to have a conversation with you anymore. It's no longer fighting and adversarial. It's like, hey, let me email my attorney and check on this, or let me do this, or let me do that. Now, opposite end, stay in scope, right? This is the scope of work we do for this amount, not we do anything and everything you ask for this amount of money. And you price that so that it's such that it's, let's just say the average client gives you 10 hours of work a month. When you do this value price, it's not going to be 10 hours a month. It might be a 12 or 14 hours a month, but it's a guaranteed amount. And the real key is if you can figure out how to get more efficient and get the 10 hours down to 5 hours, now you're making double plus an hour of what you could be making. And you know what else you don't have to do? You don't have to keep a time log. You don't have to keep track of anything. You can just go have fun. You can pick up the phone anywhere, do anything. You're not worried about it because neither of you is punching a clock. I mean, that's like a factory worker.
And I want to highlight something you said there, and take it another step further and see what you think about it. So, I think as a stepping stone for lawyers who are stuck in this time equals money mindset because it's been a mainstay in the profession for half a century, they hear that and they're like, well, okay, I guess I kind of get that because it's thinking about it in terms of hours, right? A 10-hour task, I'll bill it at this recurring thing. They need me to do it for them every month. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes less, but now I'm incentivized to do efficiency, so it takes less time. I get that. That lawyer in that mindset gets it. But I think, and here's where I want to take that a little further, is once you're incentivized to be more efficient and get to that end result, the value, you mentioned value-based pricing, that's what your client wants. They don't want you to work on a thing for 10 hours. They want you to get the result. Once you're incentivized to do that, there might even be ways where you could do it in a minute or an hour. And so at that point, it doesn't really make sense to think about time equals money because you've completely decoupled time from money. You're just doing valuable work for fixed fee at that point. So what do you think about that?
And I agree with you. If you think about it, let's say that because of the way you're doing things, if you can start handing stuff off to an admin, you can't normally bill an admin.
Mhm.
But now you're taking your billable and giving it to an admin and you're still getting paid because there's parts of it that are that easy. Now, I don't know what all the different legal things that your people do, but like for me, it's like, oh, I need to start a new LLC. No offense. I think you could fill out an LLC form in about a minute, right? In most places.
Yeah, the operating agreement is more complicated because you don't know what do you need for the type of business that you have and the jurisdiction that you're in, but you could go on a Secretary of State's website and figure it out. They try to make it easy enough for someone who could read at an 8th grade level to be able to form an LLC in most jurisdictions. Yes.
Right. But let's say you're doing 1,000 LLCs a year because you're the LLC guy. Well,
Mhm.
I can create a thing where my client goes, hey, I want to form an LLC. Okay. I hit reply. Now I use text expander. And so
Mhm.
my reply would be Z because hardly anything starts with Z and N because I want a new LLC. So ZN LLC, boom, it drops an email in with a link to a form. And all the client does then is they follow the link, they fill in all the things on the form. You've already built the software that it grabs the stuff off the form, goes to the state website, pre-populates everything for you,
Right.
right? So it took you didn't even have to do that. Like your admin could have replied to that email and just sent it and you got paid because you built
Right.
the system to do that. Now, for the rest of the agreement, I've got to believe that you could do the standard agreement, like how many people? 6. How much this?
Right.
That like ask a series of questions and boom, it's done. And how is AI doing in the legal field? I know there's all these arguments, but
We
the point
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
you can still use AI to help you build your systems, processes, and things to think about, or even just let's say that you get asked the same question 100 times. Well, right now you're billing every time you get asked, but now I could create a library that I built with the help of AI
Mhm.
to say, yep, this is it. And now I'm just, I'm just doing keystrokes of a couple letters because I know this is what they need. And you're done. And you're getting paid for all of that while you're sitting on the beach enjoying life. By the way, I was just on the beach and trying to carry a laptop on a beach, you can't see anything. The sand gets everywhere. So it's not that much fun, but you get the point.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to have somebody who's not working with lawyers every day on the show because the things you're saying is definitely resonating with past guests, but also like it just goes to emphasize that the way lawyers do business is wrong and unique to the legal profession. Because everything you just said, if you were outside of the legal profession saying these things, people would be like, oh, yeah, yeah, sure, no brainer. But you are going to get so much pushback by managing partners and firm administrators with these types of things. We're very AI friendly here. And one more thing I want to mention before I let you chime in is something I don't want to forget before we get too far away from it. And that is you were talking about from representing business owners selling their business and increasing their profitability. And I do want to talk about profit first and what that means, but how they hesitate to contact their lawyers because it also hurts their profits and they can't have pricing certainty. And so I think that's really important to highlight for the attorney listeners that they are not calling you if you're still billing your time. So I just wanted to highlight that, but I can see you're eager to go. So please.
I want to tell a joke. Are we allowed to tell law jokes?
Yes, yes, please go for it. Go for it.
The one lawyer asked the other one, why'd you go to law school? He's like, because there's no math class.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. If you're running a law firm, you're running a business.
Mhm.
Business runs on math. You got to understand the math. And I know in medical school, they don't teach you how to run a medical practice.
Mhm.
They don't teach you how to do the business of business. I'm assuming in legal school, it is not much law school. It's no different. They don't teach you how to run a business per se,
Right.
and they don't teach you how to do these things. So it's just normal. It's the way it's been for 100 years. And let's face it, the world has changed, right? It's time for us to change.
Yeah. So it's I think it's only been mentioned once or twice on the show, but we've never had an expert talk about it. So profit first, Rocky. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
So, Profit First is a book by Mike Michalowicz. He is a serial entrepreneur. He was involved in the trial for Enron.
Mhm.
He did the data forensics to say, yeah, they're guilty. So he sold that company, made lots of money along with some other stuff. And after he walks away with this big payday, he starts thinking he's a smart business guy and he blows all his money to the point that 2 years later, one of you guys is showing up going, keys to the house and car, please, right? Because they foreclosed on him.
Right.
And he goes into this depressive state and said, how did I screw this all up? And through that, he was like, oh, wait a minute. The accountants gave me the wrong formula. They told me it was sales minus expenses equals profit. Where's profit in that equation? At the end, it's a leftover. He goes, why aren't we doing sales minus profit equals expenses? Why aren't we taking our profit first? You went into business to be profitable. You went to be an attorney to make money. Let's pull our profits first and let's control our expenses. And no offense, but attorneys and doctors are really good about ego spending, right? It's the reality of the situation. You don't need to do it. You need to stay within your budgets. You need to actually take that money home and go enjoy your family, build other businesses, buy the actual building you're in, or you get opportunities to get great opportunities because you see people in distress. Like go build wealth. Use your law practice as your bait to get people in the door and systematize it and then go build your wealth doing other things.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so I see also that you're a certified profit first professional. So I'm curious to know, us lawyers, we love to have definitions for things. So like what does that even mean? Like what is certified profit first professional defined?
So, uh, I am certified by Mike and his company, Profit First. I had to go through about 6 months of training.
Mhm.
They actually review all of our marketing materials and things to say, "Hey, this is in line with our brand." Every year, I gotta take a test. So, I have to go back and say, "Yeah, I still understand what I'm doing. I know how to do this." It is basically to say that we know how to do the Profit First system. Here's the reality of it. Profit first is what I call the beginning of the conversation because what we really do is to help you have a growing and more profitable practice. And a lot of that is looking at so much behind the scenes from, hey, how are you getting lead gen? What are you doing if you have to market? Where are your marketing sources working? How are you bringing people in? If people call you, how quickly do they become clients? Why are they becoming clients? Let's fix your marketing messages. What are you charging an average client? When you're getting these, like some of you take it on contingency, are your contingency numbers right? Are you taking the right cases? If you're taking a case on contingency, how long till the cash comes in? Because in the meantime, you're putting all this cash out. How does that all cash flow? What does that look like over time? How do we get through maybe some of those tougher times? How do we know how much to hand out to the partners as a profit share? How do we make sure there's enough cash in the business to make sure that if we go through a slump, we still are okay? It's all those different questions that we sit down and we figure out for the business owner to say, this is how it all comes together. This is how it works. And this is the math of your business. Now let's start playing with the levers to see how we can maximize profit and minimize work.
Mhm. Mhm. So I'm curious to know about these other businesses also that you're working with, because I have to imagine they're not billing time unless you're working with service providers that are still billing time. So I want to know more broadly, not even necessarily legal profession related, but when you're helping a company achieve profit first, like what are some of these business models that you're seeing that are the easiest to get there and to do those things you just talked about? I mean, the three types of business models that come to mind are, you bill time, you bill hours, you're a workhorse, that's all you do. You do some sort of fixed price, which might be value-based pricing, or it just might be what the market conditions allow if it's a competitive market. And then there's subscription or recurring fixed prices. And then there's like a combination of these. Sometimes you see like combinations. And so are there any other business models that I'm missing when you're helping, like when you're working with clients that are doing profit first?
No, I think those are probably a good overview, but within each, there is so much nuances
Hmm.
to it that make a tremendous amount of difference. But let's just go back to the basics. Now, I think in the legal field, they're much better. But like if I go to the service field, or if I go to the mental health space or something like that, they're paying their people for 40 hours.
Hmm.
Are they billing for 40 hours? Are they like, cuz it's a little different in the sense that if I'm providing therapy, there has to be a little bit of downtime to be able to handle the paperwork, but are my therapists billing 30 hours a week or are they billing 20? And because if your therapist is billing 20, you're not going to make money on that therapist. And yet their model is very, very different. I don't know How often do you see on the legal side where people aren't billing the full time, or that's really probably much more tightly looked at on the legal side?
I mean, it's definitely scrutinized, but there's so much time wasted looking at billing that's not billable, that it's like, that's why you got lawyers who are working 70, 80-hour weeks minimum, because in order to bill a 40-hour week, you got to work a 60 to 70-hour week. And so you try to bill 40-hour weeks. That's what you try to do at a minimum when you're billing time. And, that's why you have exodus from the profession. We have a term, it's called recovering attorney. It means they used to be an attorney and now they're not anymore. Good for them. Good for them. We applaud them. So, and that's the only way they're able to make money if they're just billing time. They can't productize. They can't sell other things. Like it's limitation. And even with the legal profession too, it's like you can't sell prepackaged time because it's unethical to bill for that. It's not an earned fee. So you have to not be billing for like prepackaged time. But I have to imagine for therapists or mental health professionals, you can have somebody subscribe to you weekly. If they're coming to you weekly, they pay the same amount every month. They get an hour, so it's kind of time related because you have to put some kind of constraint on it. But show up or not show up, you got your money. Like, I feel like there's a way to do like a subscription-based thing even for that. And maybe to sweeten the deal, it's like you also get to text, questions or text things too. So you maybe even price it more than what you would charge for the hour. You're guaranteed that income every month, and they get a special channel or knowledge base that they build out using AI, right? So like I feel like this, even in these other services where you think billing hourly is the way to go, I still feel like productizing creating a subscription is always the better way to go.
It is. One of the issues they have is they have to bill insurance, and insurance isn't
Oh
gonna.
yeah,
Now, on
yeah,
the opposite side, you can go so there are lots of doctors now who will do one of two things. Either they become a concierge service where they charge you a flat amount per year and you can go see them whenever you want. Or some of them are actually capitated by an insurance company saying, okay, we have 5,000 people in this area. We're going to pay you, and I'm making up a number, $2 a person per month. And you're going to treat all these 5,000 people knowing that in a given day, only X amount are going to come in.
right.
So those models do exist in different ways. I think you can do that on this side too, but here's the other half of it that's really good. If you've got a subscription business, you don't have to sell every month, right? You don't have to be the rainmaker all the time. You get to have a pretty good idea of what your revenue is going to look like. And then you're not always rushing at the end of the month to bill stuff, to, get it all done so that you can make the cutoff. All of that stuff is crazy. By the way, I will say this, just I've noticed a lot of lawyers are like plumbers, they forget to bill. Okay. Like I know, like sometimes my plumber, I don't see a bill for 90 days. I'm like, my plumber must be rich because he didn't seem to need the money. And I see that with attorneys that their internal billing systems are not tight.
Right.
And so they're not appropriately billing or timely billing. And that's just money out of your pocket. Now you become a bank lending money to people without even getting interest.
And when I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form and scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show. And that's one of the perils of billing time in the legal profession. When you're on subscription or fixed fee, you get to bill up front because you have cost certainty and pricing certainty. And so like that's one of the benefits of switching away from that. And it depends on the jurisdiction because our legal ethics in every jurisdiction dictate how we're allowed to hold on to those funds. So like in Illinois, in July of 2023, so not that long ago, it was not explicitly allowed to charge a fixed fee to your client and put it right into your operating account. Those were still client funds until the work was earned, and then you could transfer it from your client trust fund account if you bill in advance into your operating account. But now, if you charge a fixed fee, you are expressly allowed to put that money right in your operating account at the time of billing, not necessarily at the time of service. And depending on how you define that service, such as $20 a month, which is what I charge at an entry level, you get access to below market flat fee rates, access to a growing knowledge base, access to schedule a 15-minute call with me. You get that right away. So it is an earned fee because it's right away. You get access. You're paying the $20 a month to get access to all those things. So you get it right away. It's a very new thing for lawyers. And that's something that, like, think about all the time and waste. There are law firms that have, if not departments, a staff person dedicated just to billing, a billing manager. When you're not billing time, you don't need a billing manager.
And they mail me stuff. Like, really? Like, you're mailing me stuff?
Right.
It just kind of blows my mind. And then
Yeah.
you're waiting to get paid. No offense, but the lawyers usually last on the list for getting paid, right? I got to keep the electric on. It's just the nature of life when you don't do things differently.
Yeah. And going back to the business model discussion, I have to imagine that equation that you gave, right? What was it? It was sales minus profit equals expenses, right?
Yes.
Interesting paradigm shift there, right? When you have recurring revenue, I mean, that drastically changes the equation, right?
It does, because it's predictable.
Mm-hmm.
We know what it is. You get your profits up front. You can take them up front because, as you said, you've earned them. They're yours. And you're not, I mean, I don't know how hard it is to track AR in legal. I know in businesses, you don't get paid in the first 30 days, your chances of getting paid drop considerably over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one less person. Like when I've got a subscription business, I don't have an accounts receivable person because I don't have to worry about it. It's all automated.
And expenses most of these days are recurring, right? Like
Yeah.
if I look at my list of expenses that I maintain in a Google sheet, a Google Workspace Google sheet, so it's not the free version, right? Like it's my business account. Nine out of 10 of them are recurring expenses, and the only non-recurring expenses are things like I decided I want to go to this trade show this year, or I'm going to this networking event or networking lunch, right? Like those are the kind of one, or like I decide to sponsor a local, function or something, right? Like the marketing, the advertising, and that's just because I'm a small business and I'm only 2 years into my solo practice, so I don't have those recurring marketing advertising spends yet. But even that, I understand, in order to be successful, you have to maintain that sort of a thing. So that becomes like a subscription payment. So your expenses are already these days mostly recurring software or insurance fees, right? And even staff is arguably a recurring fee that you're paying, right? So when your income, when your sales are not recurring, I feel like it just makes that equation just so much more difficult to calculate.
Well, it makes it less predictable. You don't know how much money is coming in. You're always hoping, you're always and you're still going to have to market.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it. But now you also have a differential. So if you're the only person offering subscription pricing, you change the whole value proposition for a potential client because you're doing what nobody else is doing. And that's kind of, I think, a big difference on the sales side, is to be able to say that. And I mean, I would go and look at and say, hey, what are the things our clients tell us are most frustrating about working with us? And then how do you remove them? And I think that that whole billing thing is a big part of it. And the other thing is also, like, I'm assuming they're still billing for copies and billing for this, and like, all that stuff goes away. You're just not fussing over it anymore. And it makes it so much easier. I think just the mental bandwidth is the bigger part of it.
hmm it's those, yeah, I mean, there's like a term for it, right? It's like, now you don't, it's like the bloat just goes away, right? You don't need the billing person. You don't have to think about tracking your time and all that extra bandwidth that goes towards all these things that are not making you profits, right? That are not earning you money. When you stop billing your time, just disappear. They don't need to be there anymore.
No, but and again, when you pick up the efficiency of being able to do stuff faster because now you can, that's real. That's like, it's unmeasurable,
hmm
because how do you measure? Oh, I used to spend an hour, now I spend 10 minutes. Like, the 50 minutes disappeared. Nobody's tracking that, but you're feeling it because you're no longer working 70 hours.
Right.
Now you get to go home at the end of 35 and take a long lunch and whatever else.
Or, build more automations, build more knowledge base, do more of that business development, right? Like, yeah, because now you don't, I've had some attorney coaches on the show, and, the biggest thing for them, the biggest hurdle they have in coaching attorneys on how to go do business development is like, well, if you got to get away from that, your time out doing business development isn't necessarily like worth your billable hour. You can't think like that lunch just cost me $1,000, right? Because it was a 2-hour lunch. Well, that client might bring in $10,000, right? But it's hard when lawyers are trapped in the time equals money thing. Business development is difficult, but when you save that 50 minutes, now that 50 minutes is a 50-minute breakfast with a potential client, right? That's how you could spend that time.
It is. And again, there's multiple ways of doing things. You've got to figure out what works for you. But now you're actually rewarded for doing it,
hmm
right? Because we started with the fact that normally you're not rewarded for this. In this case, you're rewarded for it. So that's always good.
So let's talk about some of the things that you're offering. I see you've got, so your website is profitcomesfirst.com, and you've got a podcast on there. So always great to have a fellow podcaster on the show. For my Substack subscribers, and again, you just go to www.lawsubscribe.com and subscribe to Substack there. You'll see the video. Rocky's got his microphone set up and everything, but you've got a podcast too. I got to be honest. I just subscribed just when I was going to have you on the show. I haven't listened to any episodes there yet because I already heard you as a guest on one episode. So tell me a little bit about the podcast, what listeners can expect, and I'm also just curious as a fellow podcaster, what got you started in that space.
Yeah. So the podcast is all about how to have a growing and more profitable business. So we've got people on who use the profit first system and have success. We've got people on who help you learn how to run a more profitable business. I mean, everything there is really about how do I grow my profits? How do I work less and make more? And we've got even a couple episodes with attorneys who've come on to show how they've done it with profit first, not even this whole subscription model, but just doing profit first, changing the way they think about money inside their business. So from that standpoint, they'll get that. We just shift the way you look at things. That's really what it's all about, in thinking differently with regards to that. And that's really what the biggest part of it is.
Yeah. And you crossed the 200 episode threshold, so
Yes.
congratulations on that. That's a big deal.
You asked me why I did it. They told me I had to market, and I hate writing blog posts. See, this was before ChatGPT and all of this stuff making it easy. I don't mind getting on a call and having a conversation with a person. It's like, hey, show up, record your episode, be done, build a relationship, build a possibility of a business opportunity, and create content. I'm like, oh, this is easy. Like, I'm doing this one. And so, yeah, I've been podcasting since 2017.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Yeah. And so what's then the secret to still going? Because at the time, you at least this podcast, because I don't know if you've had several, but this one's over episode 200. At the time
Yeah,
of recording, I'm at around 60 published and another 20 in the can. So like, I'm ahead of the game with the recordings, and I've got even more scheduled. So that's just part of it. But like, any secret that you could share with me about that?
the secret is to have 20 in the can,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because if life gets busy, all right, whatever. I probably have we're recorded out, I think, on both my podcasts till at least the end of March, so about 2 months worth.
Yeah.
We're scheduled out till May for like episodes. We, there's no pressure, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we got to move it. We got to, whatever. It'll all flow. When you're trying to record next week's episode today, and the guy cancels on you, now you have, life gets busy. When you can systematize it, which is what we've been talking about,
Right.
be ahead of the the wave, it's no problem. It's the same thing in your business. If you've got $500,000 in the bank in cash and this month is not so well, you're not freaking out, right? Yeah, I can make payroll, I can cover my bills, I've got everything. We'll catch it up next month. It's releasing all the tension. And
Mhm.
so that's probably the biggest thing is when you can make systems or processes or stay ahead with time and money and you're not always behind, life is just easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, everyone, the link is in the show notes. Go listen to Rocky's podcast if this is a topic that continues to interest you. And speaking of, if it continues to interest them, you do have this course. So tell us a little bit about the course. Is it like, you're involved with it? Is this like a pre-recorded thing? Like, what are they learning in it? Like, what does it look like?
So honestly, we got a lot of people coming to us who had smaller businesses.
Mhm.
They needed help. We knew we could help them, but the economics of helping them didn't make sense, right? So we created the course. It teaches a lot of the principles we talk about. It like we even talk about pricing and value pricing, how to think about your business, how to set up all of these things, how to predict cash flow, how to forecast for the year. We show you how to do all of those. And then it's a question of, do you want to do this alone and just do the course and ask questions in it? Or do you want our help getting your homework done? Do you want our help setting everything up? And depending on where they're at, it comes with or without help. And
Right.
and that's basically the difference with it.
Right. There's
Um,
there's a great takeaway there for lawyers who want to productize their legal services, where not everybody is going to want to pay for the premium product, but all lawyers sell is the premium product. Right. So having this DIY approach, and I've had some lawyers on the podcast. Jim Hart comes to mind as one who sells, automated forms, to clients, like competing with LegalZoom, and he's a lawyer and he's doing that. So he's doing a version of this, but it just goes to show you that that's a profitable way to serve clients that may not be a good fit for your premium product. So I do just want to highlight, what you're doing there. And then maybe they become a premium client in the future.
Correct. Like right now, and it's always, look at the edges of change. So right now they came out with these BOI forms, beneficial ownership interest. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah, yeah, the new regulation.
The new regulation.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's face it, you can systematize that, can't you? What if
Oh
you
yeah.
you make a business and go, "Hey, we'll take care of this for you for whatever X amount of dollars." You automate it where they're doing all the input and you're done and you make extra cash. It's always catching and I don't know, I don't think you guys got involved in the employee retention tax credit. That thing's turned into a disaster from the IRS But here you had people going out, calling up companies, taking 15%
Mhm.
of a $300,000 tax break for a day's work.
Right.
Massive value price, because the other people didn't wanna deal with it. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna hand me $300,000? I gotta pay you 15%? Here's your 45 grand check. Go figure it out."
Mhm.
And so those are the opportunities. You have to think like a business person. Where are the opportunities? Where is the change? And a lot of that stuff is based on fear. Like, okay, what are people afraid of? How do I take the fear away? Because that's where you get the most value pricing. Or the other thing, and this is the part people don't talk about, go do things for people who have lots of money because they won't fuss with you. Right? When you have somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, they're gonna nickel and dime you. They're not your best clientele, right? But
So here's where I challenge you on that in the legal profession specifically, because most lawyers, that's what they're already doing. Because who can afford to pay an unknown fee in the
Mhm.
future? People with money. And even then, they still don't like it because it's an unknown fee. They don't
Yeah,
know, they don't have pricing certainty. Now, people with stupid money, they just don't care. And so, like, but
yeah.
there's so few of those clients, it's a red ocean. Like the estate planning attorneys are all going after those clients. So at least in the legal profession, there's a concept called the latent legal market. These are people who have money. They may not be wealthy, but they have money and they have legal needs. And they just got to know how much the thing's going to cost and they'll be able to pay you. And so, like, having pricing certainty, like, I designed my firm around that market because they don't fuss on prices because, first of all, my prices are as low as they could possibly be so I could still make a profit. And my overhead is basically nothing as a virtual law practice in the modern era, right?
Mhm.
So nobody's arguing with me about my fees because they are so low, but they're only as low as where I'm still able to make a profit, right? And so, so I think there's something to this market opportunity in the legal profession. On a broad level, what you said is absolutely true. Lawyers heard it a long time ago, and they all went in that direction.
Well, but along the same lines, like, there's so many people who haven't gotten divorced because it costs money, even though they're not living together. Like, creating a product for them to say, "Hey, if you're both agreeable to the divorce, we'll file the paperwork, and we do it for a flat fee, but you're not allowed to argue," right?
Yeah.
And but how honestly, how often do how often do the attorneys make them argue? Because that's how you drive fees, right?
Because if they're incentivized, because that's how they make
That's
money.
right.
I do prenups. In Illinois, we call them premarital agreements. I am not incentivized to make that agreement not succeed because I don't do any litigation. I don't touch it. If I'm negotiating a dispute or a settlement with somebody, I don't take anything to court. I don't make money if it goes to court. So I'm incentivized to get the deal done. When
Yeah.
lawyers make more money going to court than they do getting the deal done, they're more likely to screw something up if it's gonna take more time and they're gonna make more money, even if it's only subconsciously. Because I still have to hope that lawyers are complying with their ethics. You know what I mean?
Let's face it, if you work in a firm, right, you get a ton of pressure on you. Like,
Mhm.
you have to do this, you have to do that. In It's not that you're good or bad, it's you get stuck in all of this pressure, and you get stuck doing things that you don't want to, and nobody will listen, right? And they won't change, and so then you retire, and I'll call it retire, you walk away maybe at a very early age.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, are there any other little nuggets of wisdom that you wanna share with my audience as we start to wrap the interview?
I think the biggest thing is your law practice is a business. You've got to treat it as a business. Understand, how much am I spending on marketing? What's working? What's not? What's my overhead? How do I build efficiencies into here? How do I keep my costs low? Let's face it, I don't pick a law office because of how beautiful their building is.
Mhm.
I don't pick a lawyer because he's driving, the Mercedes or the BMW, right? I have a problem that needs solved. I want it solved for as reasonable as I can get it done and done right. And That's what your clients want.
Mhm.
Whoever can serve them the best and be able to do that is the one who's going to make the most revenue. And just keep your spending in line, because the reality is, I don't care what kind of business owner you are, they all spend too much money.
Mhm.
It just gets out of hand.
Mhm. Well, with that, Rocky, I'm going to ask you the question I ask all my guests, which is why they stick around to the end, and that is a hot dog a sandwich, and why?
A sandwich? I don't even eat hot dogs. I never. I mean, I guess it comes between two pieces of bread, and it's a thing of meat, but it's a tube. But it's a long piece of bread. Like, I think of a sandwich as square.
Mhm, mhm.
I think of that long thing more as a sub. So the question is a hot dog a sub? Right? I don't know.
Well, so okay, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you. No, it's not a sandwich because it's not square. Is that your final answer?
I will go with that. Yes. Do I win?
We'll see. We'll see. At the time of this is published, maybe there's already a compilation episode out there of everyone's answer to that question. If people wanted to find you, what's the best way for them to find you and reach out?
Can I ask him a favor first?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Does Matthew bring you value? Are you paying him? Then do him a favor and hit the like button. Do you know another attorney who would love listening to this? Why don't you go ahead and share it with them? Send them a link and say, hey, check this out. Let's have a convo about this, right? Because now you can start building relationships and changing the way you do things. And then when you're done with that, come find me. It's profitcomesfirst.com. You can find, we have two podcasts. One is about how to be profitable. And the other, which might be much more interesting to some of you, is how do you live the ultimate life? So you'll find them all there.
All right, great. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Rocky, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
And that's our show. Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for being sponsors. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with somebody you think would find value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email Kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.